Jara crouched in the shadows, her dark, metallic armor blending seamlessly with the night. The city below was a sprawling labyrinth of neon lights and quiet streets. Earth, so primitive, so fragile, yet it had produced the most dangerous being she had ever encountered. The target, Superman. She had crossed galaxies to reach this place, a quiet planet orbiting the yellow sun, hoping to rid the universe of this greatest threat. Her people had suffered at the hands of Superman's kind before, and now it was her turn to finish what others had started. But Jara was no ordinary assassin. She was an elite warrior, trained in the ancient arts of her race, with skills that could eliminate any target, no matter how powerful. Her orders were simple: infiltrate Earth, study its protector, and kill him when the time was right. There would be no second chances. This wasn't just about money or glory. It was about ensuring the survival of her species. Superman, with his near-godlike abilities, was a ticking time bomb. He could turn the entire galaxy against them with a single thought. Jira couldn't afford to fail. She watched as Superman soared across the night sky, a blur of red and blue against the dark backdrop of space. His figure was unmistakable, muscular, imposing, and glowing with an otherworldly light. A hero to them, a monster to her. Jira's mission began with reconnaissance. She spent days observing him, following him from afar, learning his patterns, studying his weaknesses. Every move he made was calculated, precise, as if he knew someone was watching. But Jara was patient. She had studied the greatest assassins of her race, and patience was their greatest weapon. But there was something odd about Superman, something that didn't add up. She couldn't put her finger on it, but it nagged at her. This wasn't just a hero. This wasn't a being of perfect strength and invincibility. There was something deeply human about him, something that made him more than just a soldier of justice. Jara watched him as he helped people, lifting fallen debris, saving those trapped in burning buildings. She watched him laugh with children and console the injured. The way he spoke to them, as though he understood their pain, their fear. It wasn't what she had expected. Superman wasn't just a weapon. He was a symbol of hope. But it didn't matter. Jira had a job to do. The mission came first. No matter what she felt, she was not human. She had no attachment to this world, to his people. They were nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. And if Superman lived, it meant the end for her people. She couldn't afford to let her feelings cloud her judgment. She checked her wrist device, which displayed the coordinates for her next move, a rooftop in the heart of Metropolis. Superman was there, talking to a group of police officers, offering words of comfort. Her hand hovered over the button on her gauntlet, ready to activate the weapon she had carefully hidden. A simple pull, a quiet hum, and it would send the deadly blast straight to Superman's chest, ending his reign once and for all. But then, something made her pause. A small human child, no older than 5, tugged on Superman's cape. The child's face was bright with wonder. Superman knelt down, lifting the child into his arms. Jira's eyes narrowed as she watched this scene unfold, her heart, if she even had one, strangely stirred by the sight. The child hugged Superman, laughing as if he were just another father figure, another protector. For a moment, Jira's fingers loosened on the button. She could feel the weight of her mission pressing down on her, the knowledge that failure would mean the death of her people. And yet, in that moment, she hesitated. The wind howled through the city, and Jira's mind flashed back to the words of her superiors. Do what you must. This is for the survival of your species. But as she watched Superman, holding the child, her resolve began to crumble. She wasn't sure if it was the innocence in the child's eyes or the overwhelming humanity in Superman's actions. But something in her shifted. Jara clenched her fist, her gauntlet humming with the faintest pulse. The mission was clear, but for the first time, she wasn't sure if she could go through with it. Jara sat perched atop a high rise in the heart of Metropolis, watching the bustling streets below. The city pulsed with life, a chaotic rhythm of honking cars, flashing signs, and people rushing in every direction. It was the perfect cover for an assassin, and Jara had grown accustomed to blending into her surroundings, invisible, unnoticed. She glanced at her wrist device again. Superman was scheduled to appear at a press conference in a few minutes, the perfect moment for her to act. With her plans in motion, there was little room for doubt now. She could take him down swiftly, efficiently, before he could even raise a hand to stop her. But that nagging feeling still lingered in the back of her mind. Superman wasn't the monster she'd been led to believe. She didn't know why, but something about him made it harder to follow through. Was it the way he helped people without a second thought? The way he spoke to them like an equal, offering them comfort in their darkest moments? It was almost as if he cared. Jira shook her head. It didn't matter. She was a professional. She couldn't let herself be swayed by fleeting emotions. Her eyes narrowed as she spotted Superman's figure across the street, walking toward a building. He was surrounded by a small crowd of reporters and civilians, his cape billowing behind him as he waved to the people. They cheered, their faces filled with admiration and awe. She adjusted the focus on her helmet's targeting system, lining up her shot. The energy blast she had perfected would pierce through the layers of Superman's invulnerable skin. It would take him down in one clean strike. The only thing left to do was wait for the perfect opening. But before she could fire, a sharp voice broke through the noise of the city. "Hey, watch out!" Jira's head whipped to the side, instinctively reaching for her weapon. She spotted a human man, mid-30s, dressed in a wrinkled jacket, sprinting toward the street corner, a small child clutched in his arms. The man didn't seem to notice the oncoming traffic, or maybe he didn't care. Jira's sharp eyes followed the child's gaze, and in that instant, she saw the danger. A large truck barreling down the road, oblivious to the human's reckless dash. The truck driver blared his horn, but it was too late. The man and child were in the truck's path. Jira didn't think. She sprang into action, her body moving faster than human eyes could follow. With a swift leap, she was on the street, intercepting the pair just in time. She grabbed the man by the shoulders and yanked him out of harm's way, pulling them both to the side with inhuman speed. The truck sped past, missing them by mere inches. The man gasped, panting heavily, as he clutched the child protectively against his chest. He didn't seem to notice the blur of motion that had saved them, but Jira could feel the weight of the moment. She had just saved their lives, without a thought, without hesitation. She stood, looking down at the two humans, a slight frown tugging at the corner of her mouth. The child stared up at her in wonder, eyes wide. The man seemed more concerned about the truck than her presence, but he still offered a grateful smile. "Thank you," he said breathlessly. You saved us." Jira didn't answer. She simply nodded once, her mind racing. The mission, Superman. Her mind was torn between the life or death stakes of her mission and the strange sense of fulfillment she felt in this small, insignificant act of kindness. She had only intervened to ensure the man's survival, nothing more. But the child's eyes, that moment of pure, innocent gratitude. Jira turned away, a wave of discomfort rippling through her chest. Her gaze flicked up to where Superman was still talking to reporters, smiling like the hero he was. The nagging doubt in her mind only deepened. Was she really doing the right thing? Was this mission truly about survival, or was it about something more? A familiar voice cut through her thoughts, reminding her of the cold reality she had chosen to live by. You will do what is necessary. There is no room for weakness. It was the voice of her commander, echoing in her mind like a harsh, unyielding drum. She had a job to do, and she could not afford to let sentiment get in the way. She had to remember who she was, an assassin, not a savior. She had no business trying to play the hero. But as she melted back into the shadows, her eyes lingering on Superman, something in her heart hesitated. Jira's feet barely made a sound as she slipped through the dark alleyways of Metropolis, her sharp eyes scanning the city around her. She had been watching Superman for days, studying his every move, learning his habits, and identifying weaknesses. But after the incident with the truck and the child, things had started to feel different. The certainty in her mission had begun to crack, and she couldn't ignore it. She had no room for doubt, not now. But the question lingered in her mind. Why had she hesitated? She was alone now, a world away from the city streets, and the decision she had made hours ago. Her wrist device buzzed, pulling her back to the present. It was time. She had to meet the human. Jack, he called himself. The one who had gotten in her way, the one who had distracted her during the crucial moment. Jaira's lips twisted in frustration. The man had been a nuisance no more, but he had also been something else. He had saved her from a moment of weakness, and it troubled her. She had to get him out of the picture. He didn't belong in this world of killers and spies. He was just a human. She found him in the narrow alley, crouching by a pile of discarded boxes. His dark hair was disheveled, and his clothes were tattered, but there was something in the way he moved, quick, precise, alert, that made her pause. This wasn't the typical human she had encountered before. This one was different. Did you really think you could run forever? Zaira's voice was cold, but there was an edge to it that wasn't there before. Something unsettling, something human. Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he stood up slowly, turning to face her with a slight smirk on his face. His hands were empty, but his stance was that of someone who had fought before. He wasn't scared. Jira almost found that amusing. I wasn't running, he said with a shrug. I was just thinking about my next move. Jira narrowed her eyes. Your next move? Jack's smirk faded, and his expression grew more serious. I don't want trouble. I just need answers. You know more about Superman than anyone I've ever met, and I've been trying to understand why he does what he does, why he's willing to fight for a world that doesn't seem to appreciate him. Jaira's hand instinctively moved to the weapon at her side. You've been following him too. Jack held up a hand, his voice softening. I'm not your enemy. We both want the same thing, to protect this planet. I may not be able to do it the way he does, but I'm not going to sit back and watch everything burn either. There was a brief silence between them, and for the first time, Zaira felt something stir within her. A flicker of something she couldn't identify. A strange warmth, an unsettling pull. Her mission was clear, her duty undeniable. But Jack wasn't what she expected. He wasn't some fool. He was determined, relentless in his own right. You're different, Zaira said, almost to herself. Jack took a step forward, and for a moment, Zaira's reflexes kicked in, ready to strike. But then he stopped, raising both hands in surrender. I'm not a threat to you, he said quietly. I'm just trying to survive. Same as you. But I've learned one thing. Sometimes the greatest weapon isn't strength. It's belief. And you might want to consider that before you make your next move. Zaira studied him. His words cut deeper than she expected. She had always relied on cold logic, precision, and strength. That's what made her a successful assassin, and yet here he was, a human, talking about belief as if it were a weapon. She couldn't understand it, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that he was right. She watched him closely, her mind torn between the mission and the strange connection she felt to this human. He wasn't what she had expected, and neither was Superman. There were more than just heroes or threats. There were symbols, embodiments of something deeper than she could comprehend. Zaira took a deep breath, fighting the strange emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She wasn't human. She had no reason to care about their beliefs, their hopes, or their dreams. But there was something about Jack's words that resonated within her, something that made her question the very foundation of her mission. For the first time, she didn't know what to do. And that scared her more than any weapon she had ever wielded. The city of Metropolis was alive with the hum of activity, the streets crowded with people oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. Zaira stood in the shadows, watching from a rooftop high above the bustling city. Her hand gripped the weapon at her side, the cold metal a reminder of the mission that had brought her here. Superman was out there somewhere, making his usual rounds, saving people, offering hope. To the citizens of Earth, he was a hero. To Zaira, he was a target, the ultimate threat to the survival of her people. She had spent days studying him, learning his movements, his habits. She had analyzed every weakness, every possible opportunity, and now it was time to strike. Her plan was simple. She had prepared for this moment for weeks. The weapon she carried had been specifically designed to neutralize Superman's powers. It would deliver a concentrated energy burst directly to his heart, incapacitating him for long enough to finish the job. The only obstacle was the man himself, a being of such incredible strength and resilience. Zaira's eyes narrowed as she spotted Superman soaring through the sky, his red and blue cape billowing behind him. He was making his way toward a nearby building where a fire had broken out. Jira had anticipated this. He would be distracted, focused on saving lives. It was the perfect moment to strike. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her weapon, and she raised it, aligning the targeting system with Superman's position. The quiet hum of the device filled her ears as it locked onto its target. She had done this 1,000 times before. The shot would be clean, precise. There was no room for error. But just as she was about to pull the trigger, a strange sensation washed over her. It was an unexpected feeling, one that she hadn't prepared for. The doubt that had been creeping into her mind over the past few days flared up once more. She didn't know why, but in that moment she hesitated. Superman landed at the base of the building, his muscles rippling with power as he leaped into action, lifting heavy debris to free the trapped civilians. His calm demeanor, his unshakable confidence, it all seemed so human. Jira's breath caught in her throat. He was a symbol of strength, but there was something more to him, something that felt familiar, something that reached into the deepest parts of her mind and made her question everything. She was an assassin. She had killed without hesitation, without remorse for as long as she could remember. But this wasn't just a job. It was a choice. And for the first time in her life, Zara didn't know if she could make the right one. Her finger hovered over the trigger. The seconds stretched into eternity. She could end it all right here, right now. One shot. Superman would be gone, and the threat to her people would be neutralized. But there was a part of her that resisted, a part of her that couldn't ignore what she had seen, what she had felt. Was he truly a monster, or was he just a man doing his best to protect a world that didn't fully understand him? Jira, do it, she whispered to herself, her voice a low command. Finish the mission. But she didn't. A loud explosion rocked the street below, snapping Jira back to reality. Her heart raced as she saw the flames erupting from the building. Superman had saved the civilians, but the fire was spreading quickly. She could hear the sirens in the distance, the chaos mounting. The situation was quickly getting out of hand. Without thinking, Zara dropped her weapon and leaped from the rooftop, diving into the chaos below. She had no clear plan, no strategy. She moved on instinct, her body reacting faster than her mind could catch up. The fire was intense, the heat unbearable, but she pushed through it, determined to find the source of the explosion. And then she saw him. Superman, standing amidst the flames, lifting a massive chunk of concrete off a trapped woman. His muscles strained with the effort, but his face remained calm, focused. He wasn't just fighting for his survival. He was fighting for them, his people, his planet. In that moment, Zara saw him not as a target, but as something more, a protector, a force of nature. She could no longer see him as a mere obstacle to her mission. For the first time, she understood why people on this planet looked up to him. And yet, the mission still loomed over her. She had failed once, and there was no guarantee she would have another chance. Zara stepped back into the shadows, unseen, as Superman continued his work, saving lives one by one. She wasn't sure what to do next, but the choice she had made tonight, it had changed everything. Zara stood motionless in the shadows, the familiar hum of the city around her a harsh contrast to the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. Below, Superman continued to fight the raging fire, saving lives, pulling trapped citizens from the wreckage with ease. He was a blur of movement, his body a machine of strength and precision. To anyone watching, he was a symbol of hope. To Jira, he was a puzzle, one she wasn't sure she could solve. Her fingers still tingled from the weapon she had dropped, now resting forgotten on the rooftop. The hesitation, the second of doubt, had cost her. She had failed to take the shot when it mattered most. And now, as she watched Superman work, something deep inside her stirred, a strange mix of respect and something she couldn't quite name. Her mission had always been clear: eliminate Superman, secure her people's survival. But the longer she watched him, the less clear it became. She had prepared herself for a monster. Instead, she had found a man who cared about the lives of strangers. He didn't just fight for the people of Earth. He fought for what he believed in. There was humanity in him, and for the first time, Shara wasn't sure if she could follow through with her orders. Her wrist device beeped, a sharp reminder of the reality she was trying to escape. A new message flickered across the screen. Status update. Complete the mission. No more delays. The cold voice of her superiors echoed in her mind, and Jara squeezed her eyes shut. She was an assassin. She was trained to kill, to finish what was started. There was no room for weakness. If she failed, her people would pay the price. She had to stop Superman, no matter what. With a heavy sigh, she turned away from the rooftop's edge and moved quickly, her boots barely making a sound as she navigated the alleyways. She needed to regroup, to refocus. She had to find a way to complete the mission without hesitation. Her failure was still fresh, the sting of it gnawing at her. She had allowed herself to be distracted, and now the window of opportunity might be closing. As she slipped through the darkened streets, she couldn't shake the image of Superman's face. His eyes were focused, determined. He didn't see her, the assassin hiding in the shadows. But she had seen something in him, something that made her question everything she had ever known. Then her wrist device buzzed again, this time more urgently. It was a live feed from the command center. She stopped, staring at the glowing display. "Jira, this is your final warning. Complete the mission now, or we'll take matters into our own hands." Her chest tightened. They were serious. They had given her a task, and she had failed to do it. There would be no second chances if she didn't act fast. Jira's hand trembled slightly as she clicked off the device. The weight of the decision crushed her, but she knew what she had to do. She couldn't afford to think about Superman as anything but a target. He was a threat, a ticking bomb that could destroy everything if left unchecked. Her mission was bigger than her doubts. She continued to move swiftly, her eyes scanning the surroundings for an opportunity. As she neared the city's edge, her eyes caught a familiar figure. It was Jack, the human she had saved. He was standing near an alley, looking confused as he glanced around. She froze, watching him for a moment. Why was he here? Did he know where she had been? Or had he been following her? Jack's eyes met hers, and for the briefest of moments, there was an understanding between them, something unspoken, something deeper than the tension that had built between them. But before she could act, the sound of a distant explosion rattled the air. The sky flickered with a red glow as a shockwave rippled through the city. The ground shook beneath her feet. Jira's instincts kicked in. She didn't wait. Without thinking, she dashed toward the source of the explosion, her body moving on autopilot. She knew what had to be done. As she approached, she saw Superman in the distance, flying toward the epicenter of the blast. He was hurtling through the air, his cape flaring behind him, heading straight toward the source of the destruction. It was a race against time. And this time, Jira was determined to finish what she had started. But as she ran, her thoughts collided. She couldn't stop herself from wondering, what if I'm wrong? What if this wasn't about her people, but about something else? What if the choice wasn't just about ending Superman, but about saving herself from becoming the very thing she hated? The explosion was closer now, the air thick with smoke. Jira pushed herself harder, focusing on the task at hand. Superman was heading straight into danger, and so was she. The city trembled beneath Jira's feet as the shockwave from the explosion echoed through the streets. The sky above was streaked with red and orange as the fireball mushroomed in the distance, turning the horizon into a molten canvas. Jira's heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted toward the source of the chaos, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She had made up her mind. No more hesitation. Superman had to be stopped. There was no other choice. As she ran, her boots pounding against the cracked pavement, she saw the dark silhouette of Superman cutting through the smoke and flames. He was moving fast, too fast for any human to follow, his powerful form streaking across the sky like a comet. The fire had already consumed several buildings, the heat palpable in the air, but Superman was unaffected. He soared directly toward the epicenter of the blast, his eyes locked on the source of the destruction. Jira felt a pang in her chest. It was fleeting, just a whisper of doubt, but it was enough to make her hesitate. The man was unstoppable. He wasn't just a hero. He was a force of nature. She had seen it in his eyes, the determination, the hope that seemed to fuel him. And yet she knew what had to be done. Her mission was too important. If Superman wasn't neutralized, everything she had worked for, everything her people had fought for, would be lost. She shook her head, trying to banish the thought. There was no room for doubt. Her orders were clear. She had been sent to stop him, and she couldn't fail now. As she neared the wreckage of the explosion, she saw Superman hovering above the smoldering ruins. His eyes scanned the area, searching for survivors, assessing the damage. His cape flared in the heat of the inferno as he touched down gently, lifting a massive slab of concrete with his bare hands. He was unfazed by the destruction around him, his strength and resilience a testament to his otherworldly power. Jara stopped a few paces away, hidden in the shadows, watching him with a steady gaze. She knew she couldn't wait much longer. She had to make her move before he had a chance to regroup. She could feel the familiar weight of her weapon at her side, her fingers itching to take control. But as she raised her arm, the world around her seemed to slow. Her gaze fell on Superman's face. He wasn't just saving lives. He was protecting them. His eyes softened as he carefully pulled the small child from the rubble, whispering reassurances that she would be safe. The child clung to him, crying, but Superman's calm presence seemed to ease her fear. Jira's breath caught in her throat. The man had saved so many lives today, and now he was holding a piece of someone's future in his hands. Jira's grip on her weapon tightened. It was too late to turn back. She had come too far. She was the hunter, and he was the prey. But even as she prepared to strike, something gnawed at her, a deep, unsettled feeling that threatened to derail her mission. Her mind flashed back to the moment with Jack, the human she had saved. The way he had spoken about belief, about doing what was right. She had dismissed him then. He was just a human, a fool who didn't understand the bigger picture. But now, as she watched Superman gently comfort the child, the words echoed in her mind. Sometimes the greatest weapon isn't strength, it's belief. She gritted her teeth and shook her head, forcing the thought away. She had a job to do, a responsibility to her people. Her mission didn't allow for distractions. With one fluid motion, she stepped into the open, her weapon raised. Superman's head snapped toward her, his expression unreadable. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. There was no hostility in his gaze, just a quiet understanding, as if he already knew what she was here to do. "You don't have to do this," Superman said, his voice calm, almost gentle. It was the last thing Jira had expected to hear. She faltered, just for a split second. That doubt, that feeling. It flared up once again, stronger now, impossible to ignore. "I've seen what you're capable of," Superman continued, his voice carrying through the smoke. "I know you're not a killer. You don't have to fight for something you don't believe in." Jira's hand shook, her heart racing. She had been trained to kill without hesitation, to finish what she started. But now, standing before Superman, she found herself questioning everything. Could he be right? Was she just a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand? Her grip on the weapon wavered, and in that moment she saw the truth. She wasn't just facing a hero. She was facing a choice, one that would define who she was from this point forward. The mission, the orders, they all seemed distant now. There was something bigger than all of it. A part of her had known this all along, but she had refused to listen. The battle was no longer about Superman. It was about her. Jira's heart pounded, her breath quickening as she stood frozen, the weapon still gripped tightly in her hand, but now lowered useless. Her mind raced in 1,000 directions at once. She had come so far, followed through on every mission, every order without question, without mercy. But now, facing Superman, standing in front of her, his expression calm, his voice filled with something she had never expected, she didn't know what to do. Superman didn't move, didn't raise a hand in defense. He simply stood there, watching her, as if waiting for her to decide what kind of person she was going to be. She wasn't sure how long they stood like that, her breathing shallow, her fingers numb from the tension, but it felt like an eternity. "Why?" Jira's voice was barely a whisper, the word escaping her lips before she could stop it. "Why would you stop me? You know what I've been sent to do." Superman's gaze softened, his blue eyes full of something she hadn't seen in years, compassion. "I know what you've been told," he said, his voice low and steady. "I know what you've been trained to believe, but that doesn't mean it's the truth. You don't have to follow orders that go against what you know is right." Her mind spun. The words felt like a trap, like an illusion. She had spent her entire life being taught that duty, loyalty, and survival were the only things that mattered. She was a weapon, a tool, nothing more. And yet, standing before Superman, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else, something human, that he was offering her. I don't know what you're talking about, she snapped, her voice betraying the uncertainty creeping into her chest. You don't understand. You're just a human. You can afford to be weak, to question everything. But I don't have that luxury. I have a mission. My people's survival depends on this. I'm not the one who's wrong. Superman didn't flinch at her words. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't believe you're wrong. I don't think anyone's ever told you that it's okay to question, Zyra. You've been made to think there's only one way, one path, but you have the power to choose a different one. Zyra's breath caught in her throat, the walls she had built around herself beginning to crack. She wanted to reject his words. She had to reject them. But part of her, the part she had buried deep inside, the part that had been silenced by years of training, was listening. It was listening to the human side of her, the side that had been pushed down for so long. I've done terrible things, she said quietly, almost to herself, her voice trembling. I've killed. I've destroyed. I thought it was all for a purpose. But now I'm not so sure. Superman's gaze softened even more, if that was possible. It's never too late to change, Zyra. The past doesn't define who you are. You're not the mistakes you've made. You're the choices you make now. And right now, you have a choice. Her knees threatened to buckle beneath her, the weight of everything crashing down all at once. The mission, her orders. The years of training that had shaped her into someone who didn't question, someone who didn't feel. She was an assassin, a weapon. But standing in front of Superman, the man who had saved countless lives without hesitation, without fear, she realized that maybe she didn't want to be that anymore. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered, her voice cracking. I don't know how to be anything else. Superman stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. His touch was warm, comforting, and it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The very thing she had been trained to erase. You don't have to be perfect, he said quietly. You just have to choose what's right, even when it's hard. It's not about being a hero. It's about being a person. Zyra's eyes welled with something she couldn't quite name, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in so long. She turned her gaze away, staring at the ruins around them, the smoke still rising from the wreckage. The city was on fire. The mission wasn't over. But in that moment, the world seemed to freeze. She could feel the weight of her choice pressing down on her chest. The mission, her people, her past, it was all still there. But she knew now, in the deepest part of her, that it wasn't the only thing that mattered. For the first time, she had to decide who she wanted to be. Superman waited patiently, giving her the space she needed. He didn't pressure her. He simply stood by, offering his quiet understanding. The choice was hers, and Zyra knew, with a strange clarity, that this moment, this decision, would change everything. Her mission, her future, herself. With a shaky breath, Zyra finally lifted her gaze, meeting Superman's eyes. And for the first time, she smiled. The city around them had quieted, the smoke from the explosion now a distant memory, fading like a bad dream. The sun began to sink behind the tall buildings of Metropolis, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. But Zyra stood there, her gaze fixed on Superman, the choice still reverberating in her chest. The weight of the world seemed to hang in the air, pressing down on her shoulders. The ruins around them were still, the fires long extinguished, but inside her, something was burning brighter than ever. She wasn't the assassin she had been trained to be. She wasn't the weapon she had always thought she was. Are you ready to walk away from everything you've known? Superman's voice was gentle, yet there was a strength behind it that reminded her of why he had become the symbol of hope he was. He wasn't asking her to change overnight. He was offering her a chance, a choice. Zyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step back, letting the weight of the moment wash over her. Her mind was still filled with the faces of her people, their voices echoing in her head. She had been told time and time again that their survival depended on her success, that the mission was all that mattered. But now, standing here, staring at the man who had given her more compassion in a few minutes than anyone in her life had in years, she wasn't so sure. She glanced down at the weapon still clutched in her hand, its sleek, cold surface a reminder of what she had been sent to do. To kill. To finish the mission. But now the weapon felt heavy. It felt wrong. She could still remember the feel of the trigger beneath her finger, the way it had hummed with purpose as she had prepared to end Superman's life. But that was before she saw him, not just as an obstacle to her mission, but as someone who cared about something bigger than himself. I don't know what comes next, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I do know one thing. I can't keep living like this. Not anymore. Superman nodded, as though he had been waiting for her to reach this point all along. You're not alone in this. You have the strength to make your own choices now. It won't be easy, and there will be those who won't understand, but it's your life to live. Zara felt a knot form in her stomach. The path ahead wasn't clear. She didn't have all the answers. She wasn't sure if the people she had once called family would ever accept her again. But she knew one thing. She couldn't go back. Not to the life she had known, not to the person she had been. That version of her was gone. Thank you, she said softly, looking up at Superman. The words felt strange, like they didn't belong on her tongue, but they came out anyway. She didn't know if she was thanking him for saving her or for offering her the courage to save herself. Maybe it was both. Superman gave her a small, reassuring smile. There's no need to thank me. You're the one who chose this path, and that makes you stronger than anything else. Zara looked out across the city, feeling the weight of her decision settle into her bones. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know where she would go or what she would do. But for the first time in her life, she felt free. Free to make her own choices. Free to be the person she wanted to be, not the person others had made her. I think I need to start over, she said, more to herself than to him. Superman nodded, understanding her completely. Starting over doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward, and you don't have to do it alone. Zara felt a strange warmth in her chest. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. There would be challenges, no doubt. There would be moments of doubt, too. But she was done running from who she was, done hiding behind the facade of the perfect assassin. She was ready to take control of her own destiny. With a final glance at Superman, Zara turned and walked away from the ruins. The city stretched out before her, full of life, full of possibilities. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but for the first time in a long time, she knew she was heading in the right direction. A new chapter had begun, and she was ready to face whatever came next. And as she disappeared into the heart of the city, Superman watched her go. He knew that whatever path Zara chose, she had taken the first step toward becoming something greater than she had ever imagined.